Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Scott Jorgens from Endeavour Solutions. Today's webinar is on what's new in Microsoft Dynamics GP 18.3. It's being hosted by Endeavour and our new brand, GP Support North. So, as I kick off the webinar, let's just quickly look at the current roadmap. GP 2016 came out in 2016. GP 2018 came out in the fall of 2017. GP 2018 R2 came out in the fall of 2018. And then Microsoft changed the naming convention to take off the years, and we're now using version numbers. And so Microsoft Dynamics GP fall 2019 and fall of 2020 is our most recent one. And moving into future roadmaps currently going out to 21, 22, 23, 24, and a TBD past that. I've reached out to Microsoft a few times. They're close to announcing the next extension to that. They're just waiting for some marketing approvals. So, with that being said, long live Dynamics GP. There are continued updates, there's continued releases, there's a release schedule. As I mentioned, there's updates that have been promised to come soon for the extended Dynamics GP roadmap. And also, as I alluded to, starting in GP 2018 R2, which was the October 2018 release, there was mainstream support for 5 years with extended to 10 years for support. And then they switched over to the new Microsoft Modern Lifecycle Naming Convention, similar to what you've seen with other applications such as Microsoft Windows 10. So the official name is Microsoft Dynamics GP. They've just dropped the years. However, there are versions behind it from a technical perspective. So 18.2 was released in October 2019, and similar to a new automobile released in the fall with what Endeavour and GP Support North is using as a naming convention of here's what you're going to be using in the next fiscal year, typically January timeframe. Historically, over the last, 15, 20 years, Endeavour's typically recommended that clients wait a good 3 months before implementing the latest version. This will allow your ISV and add-on applications time to catch up, do proper testing, and just in the prudence of risk mitigation, you want to wait a good 2 or 3 months. Thus, GP 2020 and GP 2021 as the unofficial naming conventions for the official 18.2 and 18.3. Along the lines of
in GP too long, we're going back to the old naming convention of no years for those of us who want to age ourselves a little bit.
And what was your first version of GP working on for you, Brittany?
GP 6.0.
Wow. Was that on floppy disks in DOS?
No.
They had CD-ROMs back then?
Yes, they did.
That's
Let's
hilarious.
not make me older than I feel, okay?
I feel that I'm only into 6 years now. So continuing on, future upgrades may be easier, and I have a little asterisk there. Where we're seeing it may be easier, the recent GP 18.2 and 18.3 were service packs, and service packs are easier for upgrades than large major versions. That being said, you still need to do a proper backup testing, validation of the ISVs. There are potential for the next version we don't know yet if it's going to be 18.4 or 18.5 and continuing on with the service packs, or at some point it may jump to a 19.1, which would potentially signify a larger upgrade. So with that said, planning for your next upgrades, anyone on GP 2010, 2013, 2015, these are each off of Microsoft mainstream support, which means obviously Endeavour and GP Support North, our teams are here to support you. If there's something that is seriously wrong or a security hole or something new that has been found to be wrong with the system, Microsoft will no longer support you. They'll just say, nope, you're off of support. There are select clients that are paying the extreme premiums for extended support, and that's not a great value proposition. GP 2016, R1 and R2, end the mainstream support July of this year, which means they'll no longer receive additional updates, payroll updates, other tax updates, etc. And again, GP Support North and Endeavour will still support you. As part of your upgrade, it's important to also consider Office 365, Windows Server, SQL Server. These are often upgraded at the same time. And it may also be a time to consider GP Cloud Hosting. Cloud hosting is really just a third-party data center. We have a great provider and partner that we work with, and they have all of the tools to put in place. And it actually comes with the Windows Server and the SQL Server CALs and licensing. One thing that we really like about it is it's a lot stronger for security. They have umpteen levels. I think it's 7 or 8 different levels of security. Their people are going off to security training courses. They're buying new hardware, new firewalls, etc. Plus, they're doing all of your backups in a proven and repeatable fashion. Those that are running Dynamics GP in-house, if you have a talented IT team with the budget and breadth and experience to host enterprise level security and do your proper backups, then you're just fine. If you're unsure, we'd recommend looking at the GP Cloud Hosting. And again, it's your GP, your licenses, and we just move it on to their cloud servers. Windows Server 2019. So those that are doing upgrades and want to upgrade the underlying Windows operating system, the 2019 version no longer supports VBA. That's Visual Basic for Applications. Historically, that's been used for GP customizations. So if you have a number of customizations, our team will have to redo those customizations using an alternate tool sets, and we can work with you on those processes and are working with current clients going through some of those steps, depending on how customized your environment is. And obviously, with all the great new features of GP in the last few years, sometimes those customizations are redundant and can be replaced with out-of-the-box functionality. We have a lot of more information online, dedicated page, www.gpsupportnorth.com or Google GP Support North, and you'll find our website. In the middle, under GP Upgrade, you'll find this page, and there's a What's New icon. There's the ability to click on the roadmap, and obviously you'll be upgrading this information as new comes out. And a nice present from Microsoft that came out in October of this year, or October of 2020, so only in the last 3 to 4 months. There is a new PDF from Microsoft called the new GP 18.3 Features and Capabilities Guide. And it actually does talk about the last few versions of capabilities. And it's a nice testament that, again, GP is here to stay. Microsoft is supporting GP. Even when we look at their webpage for please submit new feature and function requests for Dynamics 365, they have 12 different versions of Dynamics 365, being Business Central, plus F&O, plus Sales, plus Customer Service, plus Field Service, plus Retail, plus Commerce. There's a number of different flavors of Dynamics 365 that is all under that platform. And at the bottom of those 12 different versions is Dynamics GP. And GP is the only other system that Microsoft is still supporting and accepting additional requesters and features and requests, which are turning into many of these new features that Brittany is going to be talking to today. So with that said, Brittany, you had a quick shout out to say that you didn't want to age yourself, but Brittany is a superstar on our team, a senior ERP consultant, and our support desk manager. You can reach her at support@endeavorsolutions.ca and technically support at gpsupportnorth.com. Brittany, why don't you continue on with your introduction? Talk about what you want to plan to cover today, and then I'll give you presentation rights.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. As Scott said, my name is Brittany. I am the support manager here at Endeavour. So if you are new to Endeavour and you haven't used support yet, you will get to know me soon. If for those of you who have been with Endeavour for a while, you may have talked to me in GP. So let's talk about some of the new features that are coming to GP. I am going to talk about mostly our new features in GP 18.3. I'm going to throw in some oldies but goodies because I can't help myself. As Scott said, GP's been around for a while. So it definitely has some goody tricks in there that have been there for a bit. We are going to go through the series of financials, payables, and sales. There are other features, new features that are outside of what we're going to be talking about today. There are some additional features through the system security, the installs, web client, and of course, multi-factor authentication. That seems to be the direction we're going through these days. But I'm going to talk to a little bit of the finance teams in this group, of more so of what's new and improved for the financial series, payables, and sales. So let's get into the nitty gritty. We're going to hop into GP. And we're going to actually go take a look at what GP is going to do for us.
I can see GP.
Right?
Yes,
Yay!
you can.
All right. First feature we're going to talk about GP is going to make the people you live with not drive you so crazy. I'm just kidding. That's not actually a real feature of GP. But if it was, I would be ecstatic for those of us who are staying home a little bit more than we used to. But since that's not a feature, let's talk about the fun financial features that we have. All right. I know everyone here has probably done a journal entry. I'm not going to tell you about debits and credits. They're not that exciting. But if you're like me, this reference field is never long enough, ever. You know, especially when we're doing those correcting entries. You know, we generally have a little bit of a story. Of course, we still have the oldie but goodie option that we can go into our note and put as much of a story as we want, okay? But those notes don't show up in things like our posting journals and our Smartlist and our trial balances. So GP has decided, or Microsoft has decided, to give us what we call user-defined 1 and user-defined 2, okay? So we can actually put way more information here if we need to have that story, or if we just want to capture more information with our journal entries. I'm going to go ahead and complete this entry here. I'm going to put a buck each way. Whoops. When I remember my GL accounts here. So you'll notice that I now have this. You might say to me, you know what? I don't want it to be called user-defined or user-defined 2. That's great. We can actually name this to be whatever we want. It's actually in the setup. It is completely done to what works for you and your business. So instead of having user-defined 1, we can actually name this to be description, and this could be description, and this could be type, okay? So we can actually switch with those instead of user-defined 1 and user-defined 2. If I go ahead and hit OK, you'll notice when I come back into this window, that's now what my user-defined 1 and user-defined 2 is called, okay? So here's my reference. I'm going to put my description 1 and description, or type 1 here. Let's put in our account number. If you remember, we can actually see this in other places. So I'm going to show you where now you can see that. So when I go ahead and post this entry, we're all used to kind of those journal entries popping up on us, or thus posting journals posting up on us. You'll notice that my description is now there for user-defined 1 and user-defined 2, or what I renamed as description and type. One of the other things you may have noticed, and if you're like me, you hit the maximize button for every screen posting that comes up. You hit maximize and maximize, because in the previous versions of GP, it always came up in this tiny screen. It's like they want to test how good my vision is. What they don't know is that it's not very good. So now all of the output journals, or all the screen outputs, actually automatically maximize without us maximizing, which I find is definitely going to get rid of some of my clicks during the day. It's probably one of my favorite features. that have come out. More so just for the pure fact, it's made my life a little less irritating. All right. So now that we have that information in there, it does stay on those transactions. You can also see it in your inquiry windows as well. You'll see your description and types. Okay, so they're in your inquiries. If you're not a big advocate of using your inquiries and you love to use Smartlist like I do, there you go. You can see my description 1 and description 2. If you're like me and you love Smartlist, I like to use it like my own personal Google inside of GP to go find some information. If you haven't been using Smartlist, go take a peek at it. It is one of my favorite oldie but goodies inside of GP. We now can go back into our account transactions and we can add that column. User defined 1 and user defined 2. This is also an oldie but goodie. It came out in GP 2015, but if you use your control button, you can actually select multiple columns at once instead of going one by one. Okay. So now, if we notice, oops, I restricted that too much. Let's make this go see everything. Let's take our restrictions off. We're just going to give that a second to load. You'll notice that I now have my user 1 and user defined 2 inside of there, so we can actually sort and define by any of that information. Okay, and one of the other columns that are oldies but goodies inside of here, if you're ever trying to go from the GL backwards, you may have heard me say this trick a couple of times. It is one of my favorites. Is you actually have all these originating, which is originating document number, originating master ID, master name. This is if you were to post it in payables or receivables, you'll notice that you have actually the vendor or the customer and then what the actual document was. So whether it was an invoice or a cash receipt or a payment, all that is in there. Okay. So now you can pull all that information inside of there. One of the other new features with Smartlist, which is my favorite, sometimes I add a whole bunch of columns looking for something. And then I go, I don't need all these columns. It's way too much. You'll notice that if it's a little different than your current GP is you have these check boxes here. You can actually, on bulk, now with GP 2018.3, is you can actually remove on bulk. So I can select the ones I want to remove, hit OK, and those are removed. Oops. Helps when I actually hit remove. And now you'll notice that they're all gone. Okay, you can actually bulk remove. You can also bulk move up and down if you're used to moving your columns left to right. So the very top is the very left, the very bottom is the very right. You'll notice that I can move them up and say, you know what, put these right next up to my journal entry number. And I've resorted the order of my columns. Alrighty. So those two features of being able to add the columns en masse and remove them en masse works in all of the Smartlist that you might be used to inside of your inventory, sales, purchasing, all of them, they are there. Okay. Now, I know we don't want to hear this, but every once in a while, sometimes we notice we have a little bit of an issue in our summary of our inquiries, of our GLs, or maybe if we're using Management Reporter, we don't quite have the right balance. Or maybe we're just running Reconcile as a precautionary measure after year end. For any of you that's had to run Reconcile for multiple years at a time, this window gives you a little bit of carpal tunnel that you have to go each individual year and select Reconcile. The tricky thing about Reconcile is it doesn't give you any report to pop back out saying, letting you know it's completed. You just kind of assume it's done in the background. And for those of you who don't know what Reconcile does in the background, it takes all of your journal entries, all your debits and credits, re-adds them together to make sure that your summary functions of accounts are correct. Now, the nice fun new feature about GP 18.3 is that it actually has an all section here. So you can hit Reconcile and it's going to do all the years you've had inside of GP. Okay, just to save you that time so you don't have to keep clicking inside this window. It is a set it and go. I will be perfectly honest with you though, it does take some time in the background for it to run. So if you are trying to do things like Smartlist, you might notice a little bit of lag while it's running. If you're like me, I like to hit Reconcile and then go get coffee. That's just my own personal preference, but just to let you know, it does run a little bit in the background. And also for those of you who are running Reconcile to help out with your MR balances, it does take a couple minutes, so let Reconcile run, give MR a couple minutes before you regenerate that report, okay? Now, let's move a little bit into payables, because, you know, I don't like to pick on payables so much, but they do seem to pick on payables a lot lately. The first one is you'll notice you have some new fields inside your vendor card. You'll notice that it looks pretty, oh, sorry, I lied. You'll notice that your vendor card looks fairly similar to what you've seen before. Okay, no real differences there. However, for those of you who may have been doing a historical age trial balance and you're running revalue, you'll notice that you used to get a whole bunch of detail of transactions that used to, if they were revalued before that they were paid, they would stay there forever and ever until you ran a remove function and you would see them. Now, there's actually been an improvement made to your historical age trial balance, both in sales and purchasing, okay? That will actually take those and make them 0, so you don't see those revalues inside your historical age trial balance, okay? Which is super exciting. But let's talk about those day-to-day entries that you might have to do all the time, okay? It's been a long time coming out that everyone has always wanted a copy and paste feature for payables transaction entry. This is our standard payables transaction entry window. They actually have come out to the point that we can actually copy and paste a payables transaction in. Okay, so you'll notice here, I have this little paste button. It looks just like the one inside of our journal entries. For those of you who aren't using the copy and paste journal entry function inside GP, it's a lifesaver. If you're not, feel free to contact support. We'll give you a quick instructions on how it works, but it works almost identical as this payables transaction entry. All right, you'll notice that I have some transactions here. The one thing is, just like in the journal entry, the columns have to be in a particular order, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and hit copy and paste it over here. You'll notice that all my information came over. My document number is 12, my PO number is mine, for $1,000 and $5 going to trade discount. It will pick up the default accounts coming from the vendor unless you actually specify which accounts you want, okay, which you can do, okay. In this case, I've let it just default, okay, so you can copy and paste those payables transactions in there, okay. We will be, if you do want a copy, it is what order these columns required to go in. Don't try and grab a screen grab. It is inside that PDF document that Scott mentioned is on our website. Feel free to go take a peek inside of it. It will tell you what order your columns are. Of course, feel free to contact support. We're happy to give you a copy of this as well. Okay, so you can copy and paste those journal entries in. For those of you who are not familiar with the journal entry copy and entry, that actually came in GP 2015. And you'll notice that you have the same paste button inside of here. You can copy and paste your journal entries, okay? All right, let's hop into sales a little bit, okay? We actually have, inside your, sorry, lost my train of thought there. When you're using your print all functions or print your transaction functions, which in your print your sales documents, this is where you can mass print your documents for customers. You'll notice that this window looks a little different than you're used to seeing in the prior versions of GP. And that's actually because you have a print all documents function, which means it will print all applicable documents you have, and it will send all documents applicable inside of email as well. Of course, you still have those range functions like you're used to seeing before. And you can, of course, do your ranges by document number, date, batch, document status, whatever your heart desires, you can do that inside of there, okay? All right. Some of the other functions that have also been released is if you have a company that's doing business as a function, okay, we can also add that into your customer card or into your MasterCard to do business as of, okay. It will allow it to print inside your trial balances and other functionality inside of there, okay. That is inside of our vendor card. And you will actually kind of, let's just hop into purchasing there. And those are for your people that are maybe your Ontario Limited or your provincial limited companies, but they're actually operating as something else, okay? You'll notice that you actually have that inside your vendor maintenance card. You'll have that DBA, and it will show up in your other windows as well, okay? They do show up on all of your reports that you do print out, like your trial balance or any of that, okay? This is also works with your payroll functionality in HR if you're using GP for payroll and HR as well, okay? Now, of course, any of those new fields that you do see can be pulled into any of the reporting methods that you are using, like Smartlist, or SSRS reporting, or maybe Excel reporting that you might be using. All of those are now inside of there, okay? Now, for any of you that are using that journal entry copy and paste, you may have noticed that the amount of decimal places gets to be a little irritating if you try to format it inside of Excel. It won't copy and paste inside of GP. Well, thankfully, GP's actually fixed that, and it allowed us to actually set what you want that to be to match what it is. I personally like there to be decimal places, and I like the currency separators as well. So it's actually inside of our currency setup. And you may need your database administrator to help you get into this window. It is a one-time setup. Inside of here, you can see now that this window looks a little different. You'll notice that you now have your separators to be, you're having a period for your decimal and you're having your thousands by comma. You may be doing this in reverse. Maybe you're using the periods and commas. This is my personal preference, and this allows you to actually set this to be the same as you're using it inside of Excel, okay? And you can actually set that for each one of your currencies as well. You'll notice that I have a couple currencies set up inside of GP, okay? It will also not give you that error that you're used to seeing when you have that, okay? Now, some of you may have also had some questions in regards to the new 1099 forms that have been required for this year. GP 2018.3 is fully compatible with those. And if you have any questions about your 1099s, please feel free to reach out to us. Okay. Now, talked about sales and I've talked about purchasing. I don't want those that feel left out for inventory to feel left out. So let's talk a little bit about inventory. All right. For those of you doing stock counts, the stock count ID window hasn't really changed for the schedule, but the actual stock count entry has. There's been lots of requests previously in the past of why can't I just do this Excel and import it back in? It's a great question. And they finally listened. This is actually one of my favorite. You can actually import all your values back into your stock count. You'll notice that you have an import function, and you can go pick up which ones you want to import and do them fully in Excel. Now you can either start them in Excel or just finish them off in Excel. It doesn't matter, either or. It's perfectly happy with them, okay? So once you have that import from the stock count entry, you'll see everything populated inside this window. And then you'll go to your normal processing like normal, okay? I think this is a fabulous start because we all know that we may actually, more people have access to Excel, and there's a lot of lot of things we actually enter into this window. Okay. Now, for those of you who may be using your workflows for inventory or sales or purchasing, all the functionality is still existing inside of GP. They have added some new fields as well. So if you were, I'm just going to hop into our workflows. For those of you who may not have seen the field that they were looking for inside of their workflows previously, they've added quite a few new fields to our workflow maintenance. Okay. One thing though, if you are on some of the older versions of GP and you're looking at this workflow maintenance, you're going, I don't have all these options. You're 100% correct. GP 2016 and the release of 2018 actually added in some additional things like having both the purchase order and purchase invoice. So those are your first and ending step on that POP transition, or on those POP transactions. So now we have all three steps of the POP. So we have purchase order, receiving, and invoice. Okay, we also have the payables batch approval as well if you're not doing purchase orders. And of course, your vendor master. Okay, you'll notice that we have some sales functions as well. We have the sales transaction approval and batch approval. The new ones actually added inside of financial was the general ledger account approval, which is the creation of those new chart of accounts, or GLs, are inside of there, and as well with our general GL batch approval. Okay, that was added in 2016 as well. This is what's going to allow you to have particular dollar values or particular people approve those manual GLs that we might be doing for things like adjusting entries, or maybe spreading out some cost, maybe some intercompanies. We can now do those inside of there. As I said, if there has been some fields that if you're currently using workflow and you didn't have those fields in the prior version, please feel free to ask us if the field has been added. They have added a ton of fields into your workflow maintenance to be able to use your workflows more. I could probably talk about the fields for 2 hours, and I'm pretty sure no one wants to listen to me that long. But as I said, if there's any questions about whether those fields are there, feel free to reach out. We can help you out to see if they're there. Now, since we're inside of that administration and we're kind of talking about the administration and a little bit more of that database administrator, if you haven't been using this in the past, I'm just going to pop open my user here. You'll notice that when you have your users, you actually have those user type, whether they're full or self-service. It used to be that you had to be the database administrator to change a user to full or self-service. And there are a lot of people using workflow with self-service users because maybe they only need to approve something and not actually be inside a GP doing our transactional. You might say to me, what's the difference between the user types? And that's a great question. We actually have 3 different user types inside of GP. The first one being a full user. This is somebody who can do anything they want inside of GP based upon their security. They can enter transactions, they can post transactions, they can view inquiries, smart lists, pretty much all the functionality inside of GP. Our limited and self-service users. These are users who are mostly inquiry-based only, or maybe only doing things like entering PO requisitions, maybe timesheets, or maybe just approving batches. So in previous versions of GP, it was only SA or DynSA that was actually able to change somebody from a full to a self-service license, okay? If you're interested in knowing any of those license information, how many licenses you may have of both, if you need to take a peek at that, please feel free to reach out to myself or Trish, and she'll help you out with that. I know Scott will actually let you know what her contact information is as well. She'll help you out to let you know if you do have limited users or self-serve users and how to go about using them and making them more useful for you at this particular point in time. The other part that's changed is your self-service users previously weren't actually able to get into user preferences. And for those of you who don't know what your user preferences is, go take a peek. It's been there for a while, and they're super helpful, is you can actually change things like how you want to see your action bar. If you've been in GP for a few years, you may have noticed your print or your ribbon at the top or your command display up here has changed. And maybe you want to go back to the old way. You actually have the menu or action pane, okay? You also have something called in here called display. This is actually my favorite part. So you actually have what we call those hyperlink fields, or those link fields. You'll see those with underlined ones that usually take you to another window or source. I like them to be blue and underlined because, as I said earlier, I think my vision is going on me, or my kids have driven me crazy enough that I don't have any more vision. I'm unsure which. And I also like those required fields to be black instead of red. I feel like red is too intimidating to me, but of course, those are all your own personal preferences. And they have been there for a long time. Go take a peek if you haven't. This is also somewhere you can change your password as well. I can't because I'm currently in as SA, but you can change your password in here if you need to, or you just can't remember what it is. Again, if people have been driving you crazy enough, maybe you've forgotten what your password is. Or maybe you just want to change it to something a little less inside of there. All right. These are my personal favorite features inside of GP. There are a ton of new ones inside of GP 18 or even 16 to 18. We can also provide you a listing of what the new features are if you're curious. If you are curious about what an upgrade can do for you, please feel free to reach out to Endeavour, myself, or Trish. We're happy to help you figure out what might be best for you or what you should do for your upgrade. Should you upgrade? All those good questions. Okay. I am going to open it up to the floor a little bit to see if there's any questions about any of the features we reviewed today. I'm going to have Scott help me out with this one because he knows I can't read very well.
Thanks, Brittany. Yes, so there is a questions section within the GoToWebinar, and I have one question right now. Question is, can the copy and paste features also update analytical accounting fields?
For the journal entry update, yes, you can have it to use AA. It's a little bit of a different process, but yes, you can. As for the payables transaction entry, I haven't seen it been used with AA, but let Scott know who you are, and I will follow up to see if that feature is applicable with AA.
Okay, great. Next, can you restrict the values in the user-defined fields?
As you're asking if you want to have a drop down or something along those lines inside of your general. Unfortunately, this is a free-form text field, so a user can type whatever they want. However, we can, if you'd like to use a customization, can make it so it's drop-down fields or something along those lines. But Core GP, it is just a free-form text field, and you're able to have capitals, no capitals, any kind of free-form text inside of there.
Okay, and it almost sounds like a follow-up question from another person, but can you pull the user-defined fields into a Smartlist?
100%. These two are inside your Smartlist, inside your financial activities. So if you hop into your financial account transactions, you'll see that you have two new columns inside of here called user-defined 1 and 2. And I'm just going to show you what they look like by looking for my journal entry here. And I am see my journal entry. So you do have the two new fields that are inside of there, inside your Smartlist. If you have any custom Smartlist that you may have made with Smartlist Builder or Smartlist Designer, you can pull those inside of there as well. For those of you who are curious, this field is actually inside your GL 20,000 tables. If you're used to seeing those table names inside of Excel Builder or SSRS or anything like that, you'll see that you actually have 2 new fields inside your GL 20,000 table. And of course, your GL 30,000 for those of you who have transactions in history. So yes, you can pull them anywhere you want. Smartlist, SSRS, Excel reporting, you name it, they are there.
That's awesome. There was one question asking for, is there documentation on these new feature upgrades? Would that Microsoft PDF that's on the website suffice for that, or is there additional information that would be shared?
So that PDF document on side of our website does have the GP 18.3 features. If you are going from maybe a lower version like GP 2015 or GP 2016 and you want to know all the new features that have come out in the last 2 or 3 versions, feel free to contact us. We have put these together for your convenience so that you know that what you're getting if you are going to be skipping some versions. But yes, 100%, they are all out there, both on our website and in customer source. They're a little bit to navigate if you're going more than one version, so feel free to reach out to us. Trish is usually happy to give you that consolidated document of all the new features you'll be getting if you're skipping more than one version.
Great, thank you, Brittany. And obviously, as part of any of the GP upgrades, I think there's typically a strategy session and a what's new discussion around mapping old processes to new processes. So you guys are never left alone.
100%. We usually also do some training on new features as well if you're unsure about how to use those or how to move those new features into your current processes.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, they were moving from 2015 to 2018 or beyond. So yeah, the project team will be able to help you with that, Patrick. And I think that is it for our new questions. Oh, nope, I have another one here. Sorry, they're flying through now. Copies. Is there a way to set up a stock count schedules by bin number range? I don't think that's directly related to what we're talking about, but
are you
have the
asking
floor.
If you can import or create import your stock count in your stock count schedule? The answer is yes, you can do that. Or if you're looking to do it in the prior way, let me just hop out of here. To create that stock count schedule, a lot of times we use that mass add feature. And it's usually, these are kind of the items you can do it by. There is no bin or type. However, you can import which ones you want in that stock count. So you can, sort those items, whatever you want, by those bins inside Smartlist, export them out to Excel, and then import them back into the stock count schedule because that stock count import and export has been added into 18.3. Okay, so to answer your question, yes, you can, because you can use the import functionality now.
That's great. Thank you, Brittany.
No problem.
And I received a reply back to say, awesome, that works, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Well, I told you, stock counts are very exciting.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions that people have typed in. Thank you for everyone for joining. I'm going to take back control and just wrap up with a little bit about us, attendees, myself, make myself presenter, show my screen. There we go. Okay, thanks again, Brittany. And yeah, we talked about security, the two-factor authentication, productivity, all the other great stuff. Our demo. For those that are new to GP Support North and Endeavour, we've been around for 30 years, actually 31 and a half now. Supporting GP, we also support Dynamics Business Central and Nav, as well as the CRM product, Cloud, Office, and Microsoft 365. For anyone who does want to transition from GP to Business Central, that's something we can assist with. Though if GP is here to stay, then the cost of transition really does require a business case. And again, we can help you with that business case as well. There are viable migration paths to move from GP to Business Central. And there's also special incentives from Microsoft that'll match the new higher cost price of Business Central to your current annual enhancement. However, Business Central is based on Dynamics Nav, formerly Navision. They use account dimensions rather than a detailed chart of accounts. So there'll be effort to change your accounts and obviously training around those. New reports, new processes, new integrations, and new end user training. So all of those new components that are related to a migration, it's not just a swap of data. Just about everything is slightly changed, if not significantly changed. We're finding that the cost is about 40 to 60% of the cost of a new implementation. So if you spent 100 grand to implement X number of years ago, you're looking at $40,000 to $60,000. If you're half that price, then obviously the percentages still hold up. And with that at the end, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. You can reach out to Trish for current clients, and as Brittany said, she has additional information to share, as well as James and Steve. Happy to contact you and talk with you throughout this wonderful year of ours in 2021 and obviously and beyond. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks again, Brittany, and we'll talk to you on our next webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.